everybody for staying for this, and this is going to be a fabulous panel. We have with us today for the transformation panel, the climax of this summit. We have on my furthest from me, we have Nicolas Bonnard, who is the CEO of Vice France. Used to be at Discovery, I think Nickelodeon, whatever. He has a past in traditional media. Yeah. All right, next to him we have Cédric Gouliardon, who is the VP, no, you're the CTO, as in Chief Technology Officer at myrepublic.com, which is based in Indonesia, Singapore? Both, there we go. Okay, that's going to be very interesting. We'll get to talk a little bit about Asia. And we have Jérôme Perrani, who is the VP of Mobile and Partnerships for the L'Express Group, which is a long-standing French magazine, now moving into the digital age. Would that be fair to say? In fact, that's what we're going to be talking about a lot with these gentlemen, is the move from traditional to digital, how that works, what are the challenges, what you have to do in your life. So I'm going to start with that kind of question for each of you. Give me one characteristic of a traditional media player that you think stands you in good stead when you become a digital player. What is the thing you most admire about how traditional players run their businesses that you think digital players could benefit from? One phrase, one sentence. And if it's nothing, then you say there is nothing that they do right. But if there is something, I am sure there is something. Come on, Nicolas. You've been at one for many years.
I've been at both. I think they're so dramatic.
No, we're gonna ask the opposite in a minute. There are good things that digital does too. What do traditional players do well?
I think it's the rigor and the process that they have in place. I think
for making decisions or for everything.
For running organizations.
Mm-hmm.
I really see that as something that those big organizations have.
They know how to do that.
They know how to do that, and at scale.
And at scale. For you, Cédric, what would it be?
I'm not too sure. I think, quite frankly, they've been quite good at, over time and systematically, market content and understand how to get the content marketed properly. And I think a lot of the new startups have a lot to learn there.
Okay, that's fair enough. Jérôme?
I used to work at within a pay TV operator a long time ago. I worked for a big media group, and now L'Express, which is a small media group at the French scale. And we are running a digital business unit of 100 people. And the DNA of the digital business unit is pure player. And the big difference between the digital business unit and the traditional print division of the company and over big media groups in France and over big companies on the media industry is that on the digital, the market is so speed, the change are so frequent.
Yes.
Each week, each day, that what I admire regarding big companies is the capacity to have long-run strategy.
Capacity to have what?
Long-run strategy.
Okay.
To have a 3-year forecast. When you are working in the digital space, you
don't have time for that.
You don't have time, and you don't have the visibility to have a 3 years view of what's going on.
All right, I'm going to ask you the obverse. What if you were still, and to some extent you are still, or you will become a traditional sooner or later, in 20 years you'll all be traditional players, whatever, because disruption keeps coming, right? But what do digital players do better or differently that traditional players that are left in this universe could benefit from? What's the chief positive characteristic of a digital player? Nicolas?
I think to your point earlier, I think there's sort of the pure player component where digital players have a much better understanding of their audience. Big traditional media players are used to basically a wholesale.
Imposing, yes.
They're a wholesale model. They're not selling directly to the end consumer, and they're used to marketing to blocks, to continents. A digital player is a lot more, because it has that direct relationship with the audience. Understands that the audience is not one monolithic block. It's an archipelago. It's, there is an audience that's here, that's different, and which we're in contact with, however, needs to be addressed in a completely different way. One audience is different to the other, one demo is different to the other, and being able to deliver to that specific audience in a format and in a tone that is specific to that audience.
Yes, it's a little bit less top down and impositional than the traditional players have traditionally done it. Cedric, what else would you say is a positive from the point of view of digital players? What do you like? Since you work for one, what is it? What's the positive?
They know how to fail, learn from it, pivot, and start again quickly.
Is that because they're all so young?
No, I mean there's many digital players that are very seasoned executives in there. They just learn to fail. So in traditional companies, typically it's like you cannot fail, and then if you do, you're out.
Yes.
Like in my Republic, I mean, one of our co-founders said, we fail all the time. Yeah, we do succeed from time to time too, but fundamentally it's about learning how to fail and
moving
rebound
on
and move on.
That's very interesting observation. Jerome?
I totally agree with the test and learn approach of digital players, and there is also a fact that digital players are not afraid to enter into new markets.
They're not afraid to move into new markets.
So to attack the whole world with a new service. So new players are coming from every country on each segment or each vertical. So there are no barriers to entry from any company.
Okay. How would each of you describe, since you're now in a sense, digital players, how would you describe your relationship with your customers? How does it work for you, Nicholas? How does it work at Vice? And what kinds of interactions with one's customers do you have?
Well, we've got two types of customers. I mean, there's the audience itself,
yes,
which is sort of traditional millennial 18 to 35, and then there's the B2B customer, which is sometimes not necessarily in line, in the sense where we have a very young audience that has a very specific point of view. Vice takes a very specific point of view, editorial positioning, and a tone, which is comes from its history of being a fanzine, street culture, gonzo journalism, and things like that, and understands that audience. The audience expects that kind of tone, whilst the brands, the advertisers, the traditional media players,
not as used to that.
Not as used to that. Yeah. Where we have, I usually say that at Vice we have one foot in the gutter and the other foot in the palace, because we're talking about street culture, rap music, sex, drugs, alcohol with no filter.
Fun stuff here, yeah.
But at the same time, our biggest clients are
Procter and Gamble and
Chanel, Procter and Gamble, Canal Plus. So we have that contradiction, which is part of the DNA. You can't fight. You can dial down one or two sides of it, but it's part of that inherent DNA, and you have to understand those contradictions, and you have to plan for them.
Yeah.
But that's our challenge every day. It's like, how do you go into a meeting with a luxury brand, and you've got your 21-year-old editor on Snapchat who just posted a snap on a very sexually explicit topic. And you know that Snapchat is your shop window.
Yes.
Difficult explanation to have.
Yes, I had not thought of that, quite that disconnect. And you're just speaking of the French market, are you not, more or less, in this? Or you think this is generalized to every...
This is Vice generally, but also other players in this field where there is this audience, this generation, which is,
a little looser, would you describe?
They've got a big sort of bullshit factor, which is, they don't want to have something that's prepackaged for them, toned down and politically correct. They want to hear it. So that brutality goes against the grain of what we hear traditionally in other media or news organizations. So, so there's a very fine balance to be had.
Absolutely. Cedric, tell us briefly, since you are now an expert in Asia and that market is changing very rapidly and is in some ways very advanced. Tell us what your company does and what your relationship to customers is like.
So on the one hand, we try to be very personal, very close to their needs. And at the same time, we want to be a bit, not in their hair, not in their face all the time. Indonesia is moving extremely fast. Internet is mobile first, meaning today, TV consumption or video consumption, what's TV, really, is mobile first.
Wow.
At the same time, there's a lot of monetization that happens on, fixed platforms. So there's, I think what we see in Asia is you have a lot of actors from the internet, whether, from China, from Japan, from Taiwan, from Singapore, who come and start entering the TV business, okay? And, so we're discussing, so Alibaba, everybody knows Alibaba, the Chinese competition to Amazon. They're listed on the NASDAQ, they're worth over 100 billion, easy, or 200 billion, they're absolutely huge. And the Chinese have started to try and conquer the world. And I don't think people see that coming in Europe or the US.
Well, because here it's always been America and Europe and what that dynamic is, and it's shifted, and we hadn't thought about the preoccupation in Southeast Asia being more about China. So that's what
It was America first, and that's
and now
changing.
it's China, yes, okay.
So I think you're going to have a lot of new actors that are going to come in, and they're extremely innovative. They're very technologically savvy, and they're going to hire all of the good, I would say,
Producers,
fast-thinking executives from the industry, and get them to change and accelerate the disruption.
Interesting.
And those companies who don't move, who don't understand data, who don't understand technology, and how to leverage that to reach out to their audiences that are fragmented by nature, they're dead.
Oh, that's okay. It's going to be a quite interesting fallout in the next few years there. Jerome, tell us a little bit about how you move an established news organization from traditional weekly magazine, right,
Yeah.
to digital online, and also have a whole new owner that one would never have expected you to have 10 years ago. Well, I never expected it.
In fact, we launched the website in 2005
Okay.
with a real-time news approach. We launched mobile apps around 2010, and the conclusion is that digital has increased the number of readers. So today we have 12 million readers on digitals, and 4 million people that have registered on our website. We have 0.8 million people that are using a lot our apps. And if you make a deep dive into the numbers, you will find that we have 5,000 people that are using L'Express on Apple Watch. So you have a huge diversity of readers. So you have, let's say, random readers that are seeing an article on Facebook and are coming to the website, and you have huge level readers that are using the website, using the apps, Apple Watch, subscribing to the push notification system. So the number of touch points have also exploded due to the digital.
I understand you weren't there when all of that happened, but you're there now, and you must have heard. I cannot believe, having come from a print background where the disruption in the publishing business has been absolutely incredible over the last 15 years. When the newspapers I were at moved from newspapers, daily newspapers, to online. It was incredibly disruptive of people's lives, their jobs, everything we were doing. There was a lot of skepticism. I'm imagining it must have been similar at L'Express. What happened? What can you tell us about what that change was like, and what happened to people who couldn't adapt?
They left the company.
There
That's the
what?
reality. They left the company.
They left the company.
Yeah.
Yes.
World is changing.
Yes.
Jobs are changing. You must adapt. And the lesson, the key learning of the L'Express experience is that we build a digital business unit that used to be totally separated from the print business. And the collaborative approach between journalists, marketing, technical people, developers, I'm pretty sure that Advice Media is the same. You have to work together, and you have you have to hire more engineers in order to set up big development team, in order to produce websites, apps on different ecosystem. So you have to switch the resources from majority of resources dedicated to journalists to have a more balanced equilibrium between journalists, marketers, e-marketers, and developers.
So would you describe it, was it a difficult transition? How long did it take, and what was the size of the company before the change and after the change?
Difficult to say, because we are not only running L'Express, but we are running many different titles. But for the L'Express brand, at the end we will have 200 people on the print division and 100 people in the digital division.
And where is most of the money? Where do most of the revenues come from still? Has it switched over mostly to digital or not?
Like in the music, the digital revenues are not big enough to compensate the loss of revenues of the print
That has
division.
not happened yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the next phase is to, so after this 10 years phase of having a separate digital business unit, the next phase is to merge the digital business unit and the print business unit in order to rebuild the brand in a new world that combines real-time news, different distribution channels, Snapchat, Facebook, Google accelerated mobile pages. You will see in a few minutes what we are producing on Facebook with videos.
Yes.
So, and what you will see will not be very close to the traditional L'Express DNA brand.
So, Nick, I will ask you something similar. You spent some years at Discovery, which, of course, 25 years ago was a disruptor. Now we all think of it as a very traditional company. And it, of course, developed, it went global, it spawned several channels, most all of which were successful. They obviously had, as you put it, rigor and rules. And Vice, to my mind, is sort of a place where, of course, I don't know the French, but I think rigor and rules don't sort of sound to me like the underpinning of the Vice people I know in the United States. And I would imagine that might be similar in France. So how do you deal with that? How do you bottle that, looseness and creativity with the need to be more rigorous? Is that why they brought you in?
There's partly the fact where Vice is now actually in transition, but the other way, in the sense where it started as a pure player, publishing magazine,
Right.
become a digital pure player,
Yes.
and now is developing into a media company with a TV channel, with a online publishing business, with production businesses, but also through branded content. So how do you bottle all of that? I think we're in the middle of this transition. I think there needs some form of structure, whilst at the same time you need that element of creativity and craziness that was part of the original DNA. And I think a company that is kind of emerged through the digital space has a flexibility to kind of take that on. Because today, we talk about how do you monetize digital content? How do you monetize? Can you monetize, your websites through advertising? And I think yes, you can do that, but you got to also find other ways of monetizing in your business. And what you have most precious is actually your audience and understanding your audience quite. Very, very well, because it's a very fragmented audience. It's not the same. There's no niche anymore. And your same audience is something different at each period of the day. That same person will be very digitally, will read CNN in the morning, will read the Times, the paper version, and we'll have a different form of consumption and consume different media at different times of the day. So you have to go and target that audience. And that understanding is your most precious means of monetization. That's why people like Vice and other companies have started doing branded content. Basically, how do you take that understanding of that audience? I can produce content that fits the audience. Now, can I do the same thing for a traditional sort of brand, for a Chanel, for Johnson & Johnson, and that's kind of a new form of monetization. Also the same thing for production companies. Today, producing just a 26-minute sort of standard series is great, fine. New disruptors coming in, you have to figure that out as well. But there is also, as everybody's trying to figure out how do you monetize digital, there are brands, there's a whole new advertising market that's developing, which is branded content and programmatic. And branded content is what's developing the most. Advertising companies had that traditionally, but they don't have the storytelling that somebody like Vice has or production companies have. And today, that's a huge area of focus for us in terms of how do you transition and how do you sort of create a much more robust business.
So you have to deal with both the relationship with the consumers you're trying to reach, your internal staff, who I think of as all running around doing crazy things and are all very creative but don't really ever fill out personnel forms or anything like that. Okay, I mean, these are the people I know at Vice in America. And number three, which I hadn't thought about, is because you do have an advertising model at work here, how to convince some very traditional, very well-funded, very savvy, big-time advertisers to come on board with this new ethos and be associated with it. So you're playing on several different fronts, as I'm assuming that you gentlemen are too.
This is where companies, the sort of digital company, can embrace the contradictions. These contradictions are inherent to that space.
Or are they just inherent in the job description? If you don't have those qualities as a leader, you're not going to be hired. You're not going.
Certainly, and I think that's why that's where the flexibility comes in, and that's why I think some of the more traditional, big monolithic media players, are challenged. Are challenged to kind of really understand. They have a very strong point of view of their brand. They're very top down, very monolithic. They market to a block, to a continent. That flexibility and that understanding and that versatility, I think, is their biggest challenge, and that comes from, there's a cultural component, there's a flexibility component, and there's a time component, because this stuff happens very quickly.
Yeah, yes. Do any of you three see, can you point to a particular tie-up, meaning a relationship or a financial tie-up between a traditional player and a digital player that is working? In other words, where you see, sometimes a traditional player tries to go digital internally, right? And create some of this stuff internally. That doesn't seem necessarily to work as well as perhaps tie-ups between companies. See what I'm getting at? Do you know any that where you think, wow, I really admire what's going on, whatever, in Germany where...
Axel Springer.
Sorry?
Axel Springer, the German newspaper.
Axel Springer, a very traditional company with several hundred years probably.
They developed a strong merger and acquisition strategy since 2007.
Yes.
And now their revenues is split into 3 parts. The first, the traditional part. The second part is marketing services. And the third part is online services. They bought in France Au Femina, which is a women
a women's magazine, yes.
A women online publisher. They bought also companies in the real estate like Sologer, and they are pretty aggressive, and that's
and
a huge success from the huge success for and a great example for over print companies. And you have also Schibsted that have bought many local how do you say
outlets.
No outlet. How do you say les petites annonces? C'est en anglais.
Classified, petite annonce.
Classified.
Yes.
So they bought a large number of companies across many countries, Le Bon Coin in France and other companies around the world.
Very interesting. And you, Cedric, they're in Asia, especially in Indonesia, which is a very advanced place in so many ways. What's going on there in terms of traditional and digital getting together?
No, they're not. I mean,
they're not. Okay. There's no traditional left.
No, I mean, Indonesia is complicated. There's many people who don't really understand the business, but they got money, so they're trying to invest. Most of the very successful digital players that I've seen, like Gojek, Grab, iFlix, they're typically getting funded by, I would say, more traditional VCs, PEs. I mean, people who know the drill. You rarely see a new digital player that comes out of nowhere, that's not being run by somebody who truly understands it and who's leveraged, I would say, insiders from the digital space.
Usually from China or from the U.S., Europe, wherever.
Europe. Like the founders of Gojek just raised, I don't know, over $1 billion to do an
IPO or
no, just
just to develop.
Found round C or D or whichever was funded by guys Indonesians who went to Harvard, worked for McKinsey, so quite traditional. Way of thinking, but they just applied the different thinking and saw the potential of Uber on motorcycle, essentially. But it's all about data. It's like, I think the people that are really disrupting the world today, they understand the value of data and analytics, and it is going to change the world very, very fast, because today you have the ability to compute online in the cloud.
Okay. Can any of you cite, yes, data, analytics, metrics, we do keep hearing this is true, that it's a very important part of the business mix, and woe to those who do not pay attention to it. Can you give me a concrete example of a data metric, a number, a research report, something you did either internally or that you bought in from the outside, where you made, or your bosses made, a concrete decision to act upon it? Something in the last year where there is a metric that you actually acted upon. As opposed to, wow, look at all this data we get. Wow, fantastic.
It's impossible to answer the question because we are making such decision every day with many metrics. So, for example,
yes, give me an example then.
I will give you an example. We decided last year to transform our video team from a traditional journalist team to a more content producer. And we make a video and we distribute the video on Facebook, and we see huge numbers. So we decided to put all of our video productions on Facebook, And now we have videos that are viewed by millions of people.
Okay, so when you saw this reaction on Facebook,
Yeah.
what did you do? You called a meeting and you all got together and you debated this, or
No,
it just happened?
We just said to the video team, okay, now all your videos, you will distribute it on the website and also on Facebook. So we changed the workflow. They are putting the videos at the end of the process. So now we are able to produce the videos in 15 to 25 minutes. So at the end of the process, the video team has clear orders to, okay, let's put the video on YouTube, website, and Facebook.
And did this happen with very little resistance and
no resistance
training?
at all. They were pretty excited to
do this. And that's part of
they want their videos viewed by
Yes.
a large number of people.
Yes, I was just going to say that's part of what you've been saying about that digital flexibility does come into play. I think a lot of that is you can make decisions more easily when people are willing and able and encouraged to
But also, I think
branch out.
there's the jeopardy. I mean, the companies that have transitioned well to digital have done so because it was that or die.
Yeah.
The traditional publishing companies, like, I mean, there's a company that comes to mind like Rangier in Switzerland. 10 years ago, they had zero digital revenue. Today, it represents 60% of the revenue. They had to do that because otherwise they knew that within 5 years they were dead.
Yeah.
There's that jeopardy that exists for us in our business also, where if something doesn't work, the revenue's not there, you have to fire people, you have to contract, so major media companies don't have that jeopardy. I mean, there isn't, if something doesn't work, well, I'll just move on to something else, because that salary will still be paid, that bonus will still be there. In our world, that doesn't exist. Yeah, it either works or it doesn't.
Yeah.
And if it works, great. If it doesn't, you have to move on and change.
So you're saying you three have made that transition and obviously you have stress in your jobs, but what's your thought about the people who are still in traditional media or just starting to make this transition? I just want to get into the personal headache and stress level of knowing that you may not be the disruptor in 10 years. You may be the legacy company in 10 years that's struggling against somebody that we don't even know exists yet, right? I mean, do you worry about this at night? I mean, in 10 years, L'Express, who will care? No one, maybe. I mean,
That's life.
There'll be someone new.
That's life. That's just life. If you go back into the 50s, how much companies are still alive?
Well, if you go back to the 50s, it was film companies that thought that television was going to put them out of business, and it didn't yet. So, but now there are people losing their jobs.
Yeah, but if you go if you see at the top 10 companies on the New York Stock Exchange, you will see also the same transformation of the list of the companies. So now it's time for it's the era of the Google, the Amazon, the Facebook. We will see in the future if they can
sustain their business.
Today, it seems to me that they are very sustainable, but who knows? In the future, maybe it will come from the Chinese players. The Chinese state is very powerful to build local champions, and now they are attacking the French e-commerce market. If you go to the French App Store in the shopping category, you will see 3 or 4 Chinese app among the top 20
and that
apps.
was unthinkable just 5 years ago, probably.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not binary. I mean, it doesn't mean that suddenly traditional media is going to switch off and it's going to be digital. I mean, I think today
it's a slow zigzag.
It's zigzag. There's still room for print magazines, and now there's a mix between print magazine and a digital magazine. Retailers have both a physical retail destination and an online destination. We have a print magazine that's still there. It's changed. It's no longer, it's more of a marketing tool, but we've also launched a TV channel, a linear TV channel, We understand there's an older audience, but it's still there, whilst at the same time we have a digital business and we have a social business. So
Right.
there's no...
There's no either or.
There's no either or. It's going to be, and the, you know, the Disneys and these guys will still be here probably in 10, 15 years. They'll still make gazillions of dollars. And there's no, I mean, you have to kind of, flexibility and versatility are probably key going forward. You can't just sit
No
there,
matter what kind of
no matter
player
what
you are. Okay.
Maybe we can finish with one video, only 30 seconds of our most viewed video, and you will see that it has nothing close to the traditional DNA of the L'Express brand.
Les couleurs pour lesquelles vous avez voté. Ne bougez pas dans quelques instants, le live show.
So this video has been distributed last year at the end of the European Football Championship. We are using a third-party solution that enables us to have the rights cleared. So we have not bought any right to distribute this video. We have put it on Facebook, and we have the agility to put it online very fast before the competition. And it has been viewed by more than 6 million people. And we have another one, the one with Michelle Obama. It's a mashup of videos found on the internet, made internally, text over videos. It has been viewed by 9.3 million people. And we have a very huge discussion below the video between French internet users. And it has been shared 100,000 times on Facebook. So Facebook is for us a distribution channel like...
It's a promotional channel for you.
Distribution.
And distribution.
Yeah. So one day Facebook will enable us to make money with that type of video, and it will be great.
Yes, so that is the future. I want to thank Nicolas and Cedric and Jerome for these very interesting thoughts. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Bruce. And thank you, Bruce, for hosting all of us.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Elizabeth did a great job. Thank you.